Ladies and gentlemen, have I got a guest for you today? How about Mr. Jeffrey Hayzlett in the studio? This is incredible. He's one of the most inspirational marketing minds of our time. He's a primetime TV and podcast host, a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and a global business celebrity. You probably have seen some of Jeffrey's work. If you haven't seen him or heard him, he's on primetime television, C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett, Executive Perspectives on C-Suite TV, All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio. He's the author of a number of books, The Mirror Test, Running the Gauntlet, Think Big, Act Bigger, The Hero Factor, and also he's the CEO of the C-Suite Network. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Jeffrey Hayzlett. Jeffrey Hayzlett, welcome to the Channel Chatter podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks very much for having me.
Absolutely. I can't tell you what a treat this is. For the listeners who wouldn't obviously know this information, we met a lot of years ago. It was way back when I was at the Toro Company. Gosh, I think I was there from 01 to 11. And somewhere in the early days, you came out to, I think it was Minneapolis, and you did some time with the SMEI, the Sales Management Executives Program.
Yeah.
And you were trying to polish us up and get us acting right, and and so
I was chairman of that. Yeah, I was chairman of that group for a couple of years, right after 9/11. A lot of organizations had some change. That organization had a lot of change, and so I ended up stepping in during that time period because it was tough for a lot of business people at that time. There was a lot of turmoil, and so I stepped in as chairman of that group and ended up staying for a couple of years as chair. And I hit the road whenever possible. Sales and Marketing Executives International, of course, has the Hall of Fame, of which I'm lucky enough to be a member, along with Tommy Thompson, and let's see who else. Bill Watson. Bill Watson was a founder of IBM. Rocky, the founder of Benihana's. Let's see, my man, Zig Ziglar. I can think of all these things, that all these people that were, J.C. Penney, James Cash Penney, which most people don't know. His middle name was Cash, James Cash Penney, J.C. Penney. Yeah. So a lot of great leaders that are, in that group, and I'm just honored to be a part of them.
Well, that's a short list. I mean, that's actually a big list, but there's some big names on there. I listened to Zig a couple of times, and it was pretty awesome. So
I met Zig when I was 25, I think, was the first time I met Zig, and became a good friend of mine. And I joined what was then the National Speakers Association. Now, I'd heard Zig before that when I was a teenager, and used to listen to, back then, records. And they would have records, and then they came out with tapes, and, from tapes, on up. But then I had a chance when I was 25, 26 to join the National Speakers Association, and he was a member of that. And I used to sit in the back of the room with him and Brian Tracy and, oh my gosh, Skip Ross, and all these legendary people that I had an opportunity to learn from. Bill Brooks was another one. I don't think Bill Brooks and I ever went to a general session of one of those conventions, because we always sit in the hallway and just grab people and talk to them. And we had, that was an education itself.
Oh, I can imagine that group of people, man, what you'd learn from them, right? So This audience is made up in large part of, channel marketing professionals. We've got the sales side of the shop. We've got the marketing side. So the salespeople, for sure, all those names are ringing bells right now, and they're probably remembering books that they read a long time ago. You've got 4 books under your belt now.
I do have 4 books. My last book was The Hero Factor, all about making great leaders, and more about running the culture of great companies. And so how to run a hero culture.
I took one line out of that. I glanced, and I'm anxious to read it. I've got mine ordered, and it talked about annihilating the acceptance of corrupt leaders by becoming great ones ourselves. I mean, I highlighted that, wrote it down, and it sat on my board here for a few days. I love the idea. First of all, annihilate. That's a $10 word. I love it. Annihilate the acceptance of corrupt leaders.
And corrupt not being like, they're taking money into the table. Corrupt is in that they're not living up to their full potential of who they could be and what they are, and not leading people. I mean, 58% of people in a company are engaged. The rest are not. I mean, and that says something when almost a majority of your workers are not engaged. And so what is it that you can do to get people engaged so that they want to, I always talk about hero leaders. You're not a hero. No one wakes up and says, I can't wait to be a hero. But what you'd love to run is a company of heroes. And that's really what the book's about. Being able to, how great leaders transform organizations with, really winning culture. And that's the important thing of it. And I love the word annihilate. I love things. I love to kill things. I love to, or trounce on things, or I'm a very physical person. So I'm an imposing individual. Now, it's not bragging. Somebody says, "Oh, that's a lot of bragging." It's not bragging when it's true. It's just that's a fact. And so,
That's right.
when you get into understanding a little bit of those things about guys like me or gals like me, that's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the word, and I wrote it down for that reason. It meant a lot to me, and I took away from that also that the the notion of the listening to learn, the sponge as opposed to the brick, and listening to learn and really understand people, and that lead by example piece of it. I won't spoil too much of the book because we want everybody to go out and get it. But you give some great examples of that. Anything you'd say about that?
Well, I think the most important, it's not profit over people that will make your business successful. It's when you combine people and profits that you become a real hero leader. And that's really what I try to focus on is, how do you operate with values? And I think that's the most important piece is you got to ask yourself, what are your values? And knowing your values and then having your employees, having the people on your team know those same values and that you live the business by values, that drives everything. You don't have to worry about whether you're second guess on the bottom line, top line, because you're driving it based on values. You're driving it for a real purpose. And there's a lot of businesses that do that. You might not always agree with them. You might not like some of their stands, but at least they're doing it based on their values. And quite frankly, I don't think you can dislike people that are running it on values. I might not like the way they operate it. You might have a business like Truett Cathy, who ran his business called Chick-fil-A. He didn't believe on opening on Sunday, so you can't get a good chicken sandwich on Sunday. He didn't believe in same-sex marriages. Now, that's something I don't typically agree with him, but I do like his chicken sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
But you might not like all that, but you can either choose to do business with him because of that or not. But he's based on values, or like Starbucks, when I think they did an unbelievable job. And in fact, I cited in the book when they talk about going back to their values. When you remember two young men, two black men in Philadelphia walked into a Starbucks, sat down, and the manager came over and said, "You need to spend some money." You go, "What are you talking about? We're about to have a meeting. We'll get something a little bit later." I go, "No, you need to do it now." He goes, "What do you mean we need to do it now? We're waiting for an investor. When he gets here, we'll go up and order coffees." "No, you do it now, or I'm having you arrested for trespassing." And they had him arrested for trespassing. And everybody knows that Starbucks is a community place. We've sat in Starbucks all day long and not had a cup of coffee. But because that's who they are, that's the reason why Howard Schultz founded that business. Now they just happen to be a community gathering spot that also sells coffee in cups of names you don't know. Can't figure out. I would like a small, a medium, or large, but they have this venti or grande venti or whatever. I don't even know what they are. I just always say, I don't care what it is, just give me the large one, But nonetheless, it's about values. But you remember they shut down Starbucks for a day so that they could retrain all the people in the company about what are our values. And to me, hats off to people that do that.
Absolutely. Great. A couple of really great stories. I remember that vividly. And then when I read it in the book, it all came flooding back in. I thought how much money they spent that day alone to make that statement and live up to their values. And, that was a public problem, and it was a very public channel, and everybody knows what the, kind of the ethos of Starbucks is. It is a community center. So it is like, wow, that's pretty blatant the way they sort of called out those folks. And I really appreciate the way they responded to it. It does, it's an investment in that culture that you were describing in that value system. So,
it's interesting. I don't know if they ever fired the manager or not. You can't hold. It's hard to hold somebody accountable for something like that if they weren't trained with the values. You don't know if they were trained or not. So I always give somebody the second benefit of the doubt. That nobody wakes up and says, "I can't wait to be stupid today." So at least there are a few, and we know who they are. But not most people don't wake up that way. And
Right.
so you hope that was the case there too. I just thought about that. I never even thought about that before. I wonder if he was fired or not fired, but yeah.
Well, you wonder about, so that was a public scenario that played out. You wonder about how many versions of that are more like a private scenario. If something happens in the channel or something is less, it's not on Main Street News or it didn't make all the papers and headlines that day. Like, how do the lesser of infractions get dealt with on a daily basis? Because they're still sort of covered in that cloak of value system also. Like, how do people make the other day-to-day ones that aren't so much under the spotlight? Like, we hope they're doing it, and I love examples of that too. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any.
I don't know that they're always doing it, because there are so many times when you give people the benefit of the doubt and they rise to the lowest common denominator, and that's part of what we have to do too. You just have to say, hey, we've got to, when I first went to Eastman Kodak, I said, those of you who aren't performing, I'm going to find you. I'm going to seek you out. We're going to ask you to leave the company. We love you, but you no longer can work here, because we all have to rise to this level, and here is going to be the level at which we're going to set. And so it's important for us to do that in every company that we have. Like, I run the C-suite network today, and one of the big things that I say in terms of in our company is, what is the C-suite? What is the level of which we serve? And to serve it with the C-suite. So everything that comes across my desk, is, whether it's the design or an invitation, a letter, or whatever, is it C-suite quality?
Hmm.
That's the kind of things that we put into our vernacular, because I want to make sure that we're rising to the top of the level that we can. And if it's not, sometimes occasionally I'll say, no, we're not doing that. And the reason for that, it's not C-suite.
Yeah.
And, because our job, at the C-suite is not to make you the smartest person in the room, but to make you the most strategic. And so when we send out materials, when we send out invitations, when we interact with our C-suite, our trusted executives, I want to make sure that they know it's C-suite.
Having been to an event most recently in Las Vegas, kudos for nailing that brand. That brand DNA, the ethic of what you're trying to
Yeah.
do, just totally came across from the word go. I had an opportunity to go into your event and then to hang around later for the Sales 3.0 conference, and both of them were just spot on. I learned so much. Two of the things that really came out of that event for me, I wrote down afterwards: AI and the value of AI, and to really explore what it could and should mean to me in today's world, me personally, and then for anybody underneath me in the organization. And number two, the focus on radio, TV, podcasting, media, and branding. I'd love your thoughts on both of those things in any order you want to tackle it.
Yeah, well, I thought on the AI side, it certainly was. It could have been called the Sales AI Convention rather than the Sales 3.0. But Gerhard, thank you for what you said about us, but also for Gerhard on his behalf, who I've known since the 80s. But he just did an unbelievable job with that conference and has built a brand and has done such a great job. We were happy to be involved with that. And I think we brought a third to a half of the people that went to that event. And so we were pretty excited about everybody that was able to go. But AI certainly is at the forefront of most executives and trying to figure it out. Most, I would say 5 years ago, most executives could not have spelled AI, and now they have to live it, understand it, be involved, have numerous tools that are doing it, and it's in some cases it's eating their lunch. And what's the most important thing is not about that you're going to use it, but how are you going to use it? And I think that would be the word of wisdom that I do, that we have to continually put what I call humans first, humans first in everything that we do around AI. And we have to decide, how are we going to use it, the way it's going to be used, and how do you differentiate between when it's, machine learning and, it's this artificial intelligence, and when it's real. Because we're all going to have AI doubles. We're going to have a lot of different things. And I could create this today and you could do an interview with just my AI self. And, which might be a more interesting interview. I don't know.
It'd
But
be fun.
nonetheless, yeah, be fun. I've been thinking about doing an interview with myself on AI. I thought that
Oh,
would
that's
be kind
great.
of an interesting thing on TV, on one of our shows here on C-Suite TV or our podcast network, C-Suite Radio. So with AI, I think without question, it's at the forefront of everything that we need to do and how we need to be proceeding. It's going to change a lot, but you have to use it wisely.
Yeah.
And I think that we should be, instead of rushing to use this and this and this and this, we should be saying why and how, and then what are the gates that we're going to put on either side. Because I think it's important for us to know, to use it ethically and to use it in a proper fashion, or the whole thing could go to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
On the media side, certainly I think today you have to be a media company. I think it's very clear that COVID helped accelerate it, didn't cause it, but it sped it along. Days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that also with the AI and the speed of which that's going to be adopted and used. But for media, you have to be able to differentiate yourself between you and them, whoever them might be. And it's important for you to become the thought leader in whatever category. I said in Vegas, and I say this often, if you're a dry cleaner in St. Louis, a dry cleaner, which is not, no offense to dry cleaners, not the most forefront of all businesses. But if you're a dry cleaner and there's 119 of you in St. Louis, how are you going to be noticed? How are you going to be seen as the number one? And the way to do that is through content. And so content and creating, whether it's creating blogs, creating books, or creating a podcast show like this, or a television show, a video show that you can use and repurpose, you have to become the doctor of spots. You have to be able to show people that you know what you're doing and how it's being used and the way it's being used, and you're better than everybody else. And you take great content. Great content leads to a community. Those people who want to follow you, those people that want to know your secrets and know how to do it. That doesn't mean they're going to do it themselves. They're still going to bring it to you, but they want to know you know what you know. And that's the reason why you see such great shows out there, whether it's Pickers or Pawn Stars or all these different reality shows that you see, is because people love to see real stuff. And so content leads to community, and then community leads to commerce. And that's a fact. And so the great brands that you typically have seen have done that over and over and over again by being the best at who they are. And their content's been the word of mouth, but you can't count on word of mouth. And you can't count on advertising like you used to. You can't count on your Google ads like you used to. So it's now time to really develop the core of who you are and be able to tell people about that core.
That's really fascinating to me, and I'm thinking one of the things that I had a question about when I left there, and it was mostly answered, was around what constitutes TV today, as opposed to, so podcast bleeds into, say YouTube, and you've got audio and video, and then YouTube sort of bleeds into TV. And from what I can determine, it's like a degrees of quality almost. Is that accurate?
A little bit. You can still see, video is going to be video regardless of whether it's broadcast quality or not. Now, that's the key. Is it broadcast quality? I can take this square and this square that you have here that we both have on this, in this case, Riverside or on Zoom, and you can turn that into broadcast quality television. Now, what you want to do is have more aspects of it, have different camera shots, or maybe a screen background, so it's giving a little bit more animation. You have lower thirds, a sidebar. Those are the things you would typically add for a more broadcast quality television show or video show. Most business is not seen on YouTube in any way, shape, or form. Most people go to YouTube to find out how, right, or to watch cat videos or something along those lines for entertainment. Or, I love to watch predator shows where they're shooting coyotes and things like that. I enjoy hunting and fishing. I'm from South Dakota, so I like to watch those kinds of things. But at some point, I think they'll be taken off, because anything with blood or guts won't be seen as a fashionable kind of activity. Now, on the business side, you need to go where business content is seen. And so we're developing those kinds of content engines for you and for everybody that wants to be seen. And so today we've got C-Suite TV, C-Suite Radio. Now we can take that same video and go put that in other places. Like, for instance, my show is seen not only just on C-Suite TV and in some broadcasts. So I've got about 53 broadcast stations. Now I'm going to expand that to 250 this next year. And you can also see me on places like United Airlines. So again, where people are, and that's the key, is to be able to go where you're going to go. And that's how television is going to be changing. And it's already changing, because Today you can watch it on a mobile phone wherever you're at, but you might not be able to watch your local station. That will change over time. And so you'll want to be able to pick and choose. And so TV will become wherever you watch.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to be able to understand. And so it's wherever the people are. But let's be clear, Kevin, that's changed. I mean, when was the last time you rushed home to watch a primetime show or watch a primetime business show for that matter? You know, I used to be on Bloomberg. Yeah, yeah. And my show was on 9:30 Eastern time, prime time. But, you know, how many people were actually watching? I had more people watching me digitally than were watching through broadcast or cable. Because that's primarily where you see that show. So you know, and you look at let's go back years ago to the number one show ever that had the finale. That was Happy Days on ABC.
Wow, yeah.
If you remember that show, 60 million people tuned in and watched the finale, watched the Fonz jump the shark, okay,
Yeah.
and end the show on it as he was skiing with his leather jacket on the whole bit. Now, that's amazing. 60 million people. Well, just a few years ago, the number one show was The Big Bang Theory. Now, The Big Bang Theory went out with a bang, and it was the most widely known show that year or seen. And do you know how many people watched that finale?
Can't imagine.
6 million.
6 million.
Yeah. So what I'm proving to everyone is that the media market, the content market, is fragmented. And it's no longer a game about eyeballs and ears. It's about winning hearts and minds. And so that's why I say content leads to community, community leads to commerce. Even though it might be a smaller audience, it's the right audience, and that's what you want to play to.
Indexing, creating episodes, organizing those episodes in a downloadable fashion for those of us like podcast people, especially, you know, like I like to binge. I get into something, I get onto Netflix or whatever, and then I start traveling a bunch. Next thing you know, that series is done to me until they come out with another season. So, you know, content, consumable, where I want it, when I want it, how I want it. And then usually it comes as a referral to me. Somebody says, check this out. You're going to like it. Next thing you know, I'm binging it. So, and then I'm favoring in it. You asked me last time I like rushed home to watch something. It might have been Celebrity Apprentice. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, there we go. Yeah.
A long time ago. You had some involvement with that. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I was a judge for 3 years on that show. Appeared on about 9 episodes or so. But yeah, it was quite the experience. I enjoyed it a great deal. I was working as the chief marketing officer at Kodak at the time, and we were one of the sponsors of the show, and I ended up being the judge for a couple of episodes, and then some. Appeared back on the finale and debated Gene Simmons after he got fired, you know, from Kiss. And so I did a lot of those kind of things, got to know everybody. Some of my good friends have come out of that show. I mean, certainly Mark Burnett, the producer, we became good friends. And then, but other people like Trace Adkins and Penn Jillette, we've kept in touch ever since. And you know, and Joan Rivers, when she was alive, she was a special lady. I enjoyed the hell out of her. And Melissa, her daughter, but I particularly like Joan. Joan was just really good. Kind to my kids too. She went to, but one time I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and she was coming through Sioux Falls, and I said, Joan, I said, I can't be there, but I would love to have you meet my kids. And of course they went backstage, and you know, she swore like a sailor, but yeah, she did. But luckily my kids were adults at that point, so it was okay.
Yeah,
it was
right.
acceptable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Been
about
different if they were 12. They were 12 and then tried to go back. But she would have, you know what? She's the kind of person who was just sweet. She had a kind of a naughty demeanor, but that was her shtick. But if you got to know her, she was like a wonderful, wonderful person, and she just loved people.
Gene Simmons or Donald Trump? Who's a tougher interview? Who's a tougher debater?
Oh, Trump by a long shot. You know, Gene is an interesting cat. I've been on his show as well. And then but anyway, we didn't see eye to eye in the way the brand should be represented, but nonetheless, that's okay. I won. As I said on the finale, when Trump said, well, what do you got to say about Gene, you know, saying you did it wrong? I said, well, I doubled sales and he got fired. You tell me who's right.
You tell me. Yeah. Right. That's great. Yeah, he's tough with his brand. I remember listening
Yeah.
to some of his
Yeah,
stuff.
Trump, the one thing I'd say about Trump, and I said this in the last book because I know some people don't like him, and that's okay too. And I've been a Democrat, former, worked for a lot of elected officials over the years, and on the other side, and I say Trump was great for this country in the one way that it made you pick sides. You have to
Yeah.
pick a side. And I think that, we got away from that for a long time in this country where we let other people do things. We didn't vote. We didn't get out as much as we should have. And as a result, we see some of the turmoil that we've got today. And he at least made you decide you're with him or you're against him. And I think that's good for this country. I think it's good for people to be able to finally stand up and put their values on display. And I think Oprah said that here the other day at the Democratic convention that was aired. That she said it's about values, and so I applaud people who take that role. Now, whether you agree with those values or not, you can have the opposite of values of other people. That's okay. That's what this country is made for. But we forgot to put that in perspective.
I love the way you said, and how funny how it comes back around to values again, like at the beginning of this session here, that, having a strong value system and being very transparent about it and being very binary. You're in or out. It's okay if you're in or out, but I'm
Yeah.
giving you something to resonate with or resonate against. So, and if it causes people to take action, all the better, because there does seem be a lot of apathy out there, whether we're talking about our political environment of late or whether we're talking about how to do commerce in 2025. There has been a lot of apathy, but people are telling us, they're giving us signals too, like the signals to buy things, or the signals in how they consume media. They're signals. There's no longer 60 million people doing a thing. There's now 6 million doing a thing. That's a signal. Less people at the voting block, more people at the voting block. It's also a signal. So I like what's happening in the current environment because it is getting people to step out and take an action and cast a vote, whether it's with their dollars or whether it's with the ballot. I like that.
No, in this case, they're doing both. I think we're seeing some record amounts of money that's being raised without question, and you're seeing more people who are debating. And I didn't see that 4 years ago. I didn't see that 8 years ago. But we're starting to see that back. So I'm hoping that that's the good thing that will come out of it. Like, you have to do this. You have to pay attention. This is about your pocketbook, about your values. It's about where you want this country to be. And I think that's important. And by the way, the values thing that I mentioned all through most of this conversation, it just makes things easier.
Mm-hmm.
If I base things on values, of what is it I want, you can call these even maybe conditions of satisfaction. My wife will call me and say, "Where are we going to go to dinner?" And I'll say something. And she goes, "You said that too fast." No, you asked me what I wanted, where I wanted to go. And I know what I want. I know how I want it. I know where I want to go. So that makes it easier. And if you don't like that, then don't ask me the question. And I think by the way, and we should be able to be opposed to one another in our values or the way in which we do it. And as long as you're not harming someone else, then I'm all for that. If you're being a bully, if you're doing, harming someone in some way, shape, or form, well, then I got an issue with it, because that really goes against those other values that I have. And but I think most part, I have friends who are ultra left and ultra right, and I can still be friends with them and not totally agree with them and not totally share every value together, but at least share some common decency to at least respect that.
That's what it's all about. We have a lot of friends in the same camp, and we appreciate having that same relationship. It's really special, and I'm really glad that I have it around me in my life. You reference in your tagline talks about South Dakota because we can, and I
Yeah.
love that. So you're born and raised South Dakota?
No, I was not. I was born in West Virginia. My father was in the military. He was born there, and he lived all over the country. And we lived in South Dakota a couple of times,
Yeah,
and I just loved it. I loved, we lived out in the Black Hills of South Dakota, where
heck
Mount
yeah,
Rushmore, Crazy Horse, and
yeah.
Deadwood, and all those places are. And it was just a beautiful place growing up. And I, got to go hunting and fishing and trout. I learned to trout fish. I learned to do all kinds of different things out there, and that became a great place. And then I went to a small Lutheran school in South Dakota on the eastern part of the state and met my wife the very first night, and we got engaged that summer, and we've been together for 44 years at this point.
Wow.
So South
Congratulations.
Dakota has always been home. It's a great place to, raise children, a great place for education and opportunity. And then I just figured out one day that I was doing my business in South Dakota. I said, I can do this in Iowa. I could do this in Illinois, and I could do this in Tokyo. I could do this in France. I could do this all over the world. And that's what led me, eventually to buying and selling over 250 businesses, about 25 billion in transactions. And then, serving on corporate boards as I do today, and both public and private companies, and starting businesses. And so South Dakota was a great place to, we don't know that we can't do it in South Dakota. And I think that's one of the cool things that makes our state so special. It's a very special place. And to me, it's a very spiritual place. It's a geographical center of North America as well. Most people don't recognize that. Yeah, most people don't know that. But yeah, it is. And so it's just fun, not of the United States, of North America. So it's like, you look at it, the map, we're way up there. And but you can actually drive to it. And there's a little monument there and the whole bit in the middle of nowhere, near Gan Valley, South Dakota. And most people don't know that. That's in between Miller and Kennebec, Miller, and let's see what the other town would be. Oh, down off the not reservation, but I can't remember it on the interstate. But right in the middle, boom, there it is, Gan Valley. It's literally there's nothing there. Pull over, and there used to be a little town there, and I think maybe 10 people live in that town now.
I love it. I'm going to look that up because I'm curious about it now. My parents, I grew up in Michigan, and they're on the 45th parallel. I just thought it was always interesting to be halfway between the North Pole and the equator. And I'm always curious, like other cities across the way that are sort of at that altitude or at that.
Yeah, what most people don't realize that you're further north than Toronto.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Quite a bit.
Yeah, South Dakota, by the way, South Dakota is. Most of South Dakota is as well. And everybody talks about how Toronto's cold. I go, what are you talking about? It's nothing.
You haven't seen cold yet. So speaking of cold, I want to go back to the Toro and the SMEI for a minute, because that day that you came in and spoke to us, you told us a ton of great stories. And one of them was about what I'm going to describe as your foresight to see the future of what was happening to Kodak and your ability to stay ahead of it and navigate that. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that was a team effort. It was a real team effort. We had some great leaders there. Unfortunately, we just didn't have enough time. And by the time that executive team was there, and I thought it was one of the best executive teams I've ever seen. And, in the way it was run, I grew up a lot there. I mean, I was 40 something when I took into that job as stepping in there. And I, literally came from a 3-person public relations firm and stepped in as the chief marketing officer running billions of dollars. And, you go like, oh my gosh, my father-in-law once said, who's a farmer rancher, he said, how do you decide? I said, I just take all the zeros off. And if it's a good thing in Sioux Falls, then it's a good thing in Rochester, good thing worldwide. And that's how I did it, was to look back at the values. And really what we had to do was get back to the basics, because most people would have said Kodak was a film company. Well, they were never a film company. And when we got there, we said, look, it's not a film company. We're about images and information. And everybody looked at us like, what are you talking about? Well, we make, we manage, we move images and information in order to make movies or to make brochures or to print on newspapers or whatever we did. So it was M3I squared. And that's how I used to tell the story, was to reframe the story in that we're not about a little roll of film that we put in the most recognizable box and the most favorable, brand in the world, which we were at the time. And quite frankly, you could still go up to most people and say Kodak, and they know who it is and what it is. And that, most people would run back into a burning building in order to save their photographs, the things that we made. And so, and if you tie that to imaging and cameras and everything else that you see today, even the camera that we're using right now to communicate has Kodak technology built in, because that company at the time had 32,000 patents, one of the top 3 patent companies in the world, all around images information. The LED screen that's on your computer or on your TV, well, Kodak invented that. Kodak invented OLED, organic light emitting diodes, which is the next level of screens and lights that you'll see, that was done decades ago. And so, and filed as a patent, everything. I used to joke, every April 1st, I'd always put out some, crazy press release that, we were making the wink and shut eye camera. We were going to embed a camera into your eye that you would wink and shut, and it would send a picture. And then until the scientist came to me and said, "Mr. Hayzlett, stop making fun of us. We own that patent." And then the next year I said, okay, we released Smelly Vision, pictures that would smell and video that would smell. And of course, we own the patent on that too. So it was nuts. So I stopped doing that because I couldn't invent anything new that we were doing but I was just, again, having fun with the brand, because that's, Kodak, if you think about it, very celebratory brand.
Yeah.
And what's a brand? A brand is nothing but a promise delivered. And if you think about Kodak, we had the Kodak moment, we had, Kodak memories. That's what we were, and could always have been had we reframe the conversation away from film and into the tech side, which we really tried hard, but we just didn't have the runway. And so, I stayed there for 4 years, which is a long time for a chief marketing officer. Typically, at that time, the average CMO was at a company for 18 months. And I was there for 4 years. And then it was time for me to go out and write my books and go do the stuff I wanted to do.
What you must have learned there, and how the pivots paid off, and just a life lesson. I mean, 4 years, that's more than a university. That's a lifetime, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was I enjoyed it a great deal. I learned a lot. I learned more there than probably anywhere in my life. And most of it was, don't wait around for somebody to give you permission, and that you were really, truly hired to be there and do your own thing and do it the way you're supposed to do it. I used to think, well, geez, aren't we supposed to get together more for meetings? No, that's what you're here for. Go do it. And it was eye-opening and just amazing.
So did you learn as much from that experience as you did from the pheasant experience?
Yeah, I learned more. I learned to refine myself. And for those that are wondering, I once tried to corner the market on pheasants. I had a pheasant farm, and I learned that there was no markets for pheasant. That's what I learned, and I lost my rear end on it. Now, luckily, it was only like $5,000 or $10,000 or something like that. Still a lot. $5,000's a lot. $10,000's a lot. But nonetheless, I didn't lose my shirt. Didn't lose it all. Just took me a couple of years. Back then, when I invested in that, it took me a couple of years to pay it off, because I went and got a bank loan and paid the loan off with a local bank there in Artesian, South Dakota.
I loved that story. The humility of it. It brought me back to the, about the humility and leadership and what it takes to be a great leader. And, it's like you reference it in your book about, it's okay to be wrong. And, but most importantly, you have to hear from your people if you're going to correct course and get them to buy in and adopt.
Well, you have to, first of all, we're all going to fail. I mean, it isn't about failing. We're all going to fail. Let's just, if you're in a business, you're going to fail. You're going to mess up somehow. You're going to make mistakes. The key isn't about failing fast. It's about winning fast. It's about getting through the failure as fast as you possibly can to get on the other side of it, and not dwell too much on it. Just realize, hey, chuck that up. Don't do that again. That hurt. Ow. Don't touch a burning stove twice. You touch it once, you're going to do it. Everybody does it. But don't go touch it again and again and again. You're just going to get burned. And I think that's the thing. And, you talk about learning experience. I can remember sitting in meetings at Kodak, and I'd be looking around going, hey, somebody should do something about this stuff. And I'd be in these meetings, and then I'd look around and realize, oh, that's me. I'm the one that needs to do something. And I learned very quickly not to wait for permission. What I learned to do is to go to my boss, then the CEO of the company, and set the parameters of which, just like I was talking about AI earlier, what are the parameters of which I should be operating in? Give me my sense of my conditions of satisfaction so I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and then let me go do it. And as long as you lived inside of that, inside the values, inside the parameters, inside the things that you were supposed to do, not that you were saying, hey, I need to stay in this box, but you need to know your playground. You need to know the rules. And once you understand what those were, wow, you can go pretty fast.
I love all of these stories and observations that you've been sharing, and I'm wondering if we could maybe tie this into like maybe a closing question for you. First of all, you've been very gracious with your time. Thank
No
you.
problem. This has been fun. I can't believe we're out of time.
I know, and we're really not. We could keep going, but I have this one that's really kind of pulling at me. And it has to do with I guess my question is like in the sign of the times, like where we're at today in today's moment, and some observations that I've had in past interviews and recordings and my own. It has to do with like inflation being a reality. Trying to avoid recession, looking at sort of current economic conditions. We've got sort of this post-COVID memory sort of freshly baked into our recent memory, changes that ensued in like the customer journey and how people want to interact with remember we're talking about dealers and dealer channels and things like that. So people want to interact differently, attention spans are shorter, their influences we've got an election year on us, doing more with less. We hear that a lot. We're all trying to do more with less. What advice would you give sort of channel marketing professionals on the sales or marketing side? Like what modifications to course correct and meet the times where they're at would you recommend?
Well, first of all, for the most part, no one's going to die. Okay. So you do more with less, got to change this. That's the way it is. Oh, there's a recession coming. Quit bitching about it. Quit moaning about it. Yeah, that's what happens. Things go up, things go down, things go through cycles. That's the way it's been, since eons. That's, as long as you're not the dinosaur, you're going to live on. Okay. So if so you got to change, adapt, or you will die. Okay. And for the most part, that's the key thing. If, no one's going to die. I don't think we're doing anything that's earth shattering. So that's good news. So you're not doing anything unless you're a surgeon or something like that, but you're not listening or watching this show anyway, because you're not in this line of business. But what I've learned, and I had an episode on this and about the crisis, about what we might have as a pending crisis. And I remember I titled it, Never Waste a Good Crisis. And so there are always going to be bad times. There are always going to be COVIDs. There are always going to be these things. But some businesses went up in COVID. Some businesses did really well. During the last recessions, I can go through the last 10 recessions and name you some of the most iconic unicorn companies. I mean, let's take the last one, for instance, Airbnb. Who would have thought that you would actually let somebody come and sit naked on your couch and pay you money for it? I mean, there's no way. Or Uber was another example of an iconic company during the last recession. You go further back, Apple, Microsoft. I can just keep going on further back, all the way back to Hilton was done during an economic crisis. There are so many great companies that actually have done well in crisis, and so many companies like Dollar General and some that were born out of these things and can do well. So that's what you need to concentrate on is adapt, change, or die.
That totally makes so much sense. It's an opportunity to reinvent, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And by the way, no one, you asked me about South Dakota. I've got it painted on the wall right over there, because we can. Everybody always said, why are you from South Dakota? I finally said, put it on the website, because we can. And you can if I can do it from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you can do it from anywhere. Anybody can. And that's just what, that's one of the reasons I'm grounded here. I love this place. I love to live here, but that doesn't mean I don't spend a good amount of my time in New York or Dallas or Phoenix or many other cities doing business and know those cities as well as I know my own. But I get to choose where I want to live. So that's why I live here.
I follow you on the social channels. I can tell already your airplane miles are significantly more than most. So for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm in the top one half of flying, one half of 1% of the top flying public in the world. So yeah, I have millions and millions of miles. Yeah,
you would have to be. So the because we can is a double entendre. It's an attitude of the pervasive of the people that are from there, and also because I choose to live in paradise. That's what. So. Really,
or I choose not to be a victim. I choose to do what I want to do. I choose to do the way I want to because I can. It's like, hey, let's go do this because I can. Let's go. It's an attitude. It's a mood. And I think that's important for all of us to have something like that.
It's a condition of your satisfaction to live where you want to
every
live,
day,
to do what you want to do. That's awesome.
every day, every day.
Jeffrey Hayzlett, what a treat. I could do this for a long time, but out of deference to your time and busy schedule, I think maybe we'll end it here. But thank you so much for your time and all your thoughts and wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And then don't forget, I've got a podcast as well, All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV.
You tell us what else. So we've
That's it. That's that. Then go check out the books and everything else, but start there.
All right, let's do it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Hey, it's Kevin again with the Channel Chatter podcast, the podcast for channel professionals. And I want to say thanks for listening to this last episode. I hope you loved what you heard, and I hope you come back and join us regularly as we plan to drop new episodes each week. Also, please favorite this station so you can see new episodes as they're released in real time, as well as give us a thumbs up and a 5-star rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. This will help us index better in the platform algorithm so other channel pros like yourself can listen in, learn, and maybe even share their story. Help me build a community here that's focused on the betterment of the channel and its people. Again, thanks for listening and hope to see you down the road.